Welcome to the Master Your Millions podcast, the show all about your financial potential and leaving a legacy for future generations. Here are your hosts, Jason and Scott Henderson.
Welcome back, everyone. I am your host, Scott Henderson, and my co-host is Dr. J. We're super excited for our guest today. Jason, who do we have coming on?
Well, Scott, this is a recent acquaintance of mine. I met her when I had a speaking assignment in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I was immediately gravitated to her. She's just a good soul. And beyond that, though, a little bit more formal introduction, her name is Taffiney Williams. She is a dynamic, sought-after prophetic voice, making waves both domestically and internationally through media. She shines in various roles, from speaker, TV host, actor, writer, to award-winning film producer. As a best-selling author, she has penned numerous impactful publications, many being donated to underserved facilities around the world. Taffiney hosts transformative virtual and in-person retreats and conferences, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Her primary mission is to equip and empower individuals to unleash their full potential in every relationship, positively impacting the world through Would You Marry You movement. Now, and that's also a title of her book, Would You Marry You? And I literally like that. We're going to talk a little about that because I think that applies so much to what we do on this podcast and what we have talked about in the past. So welcome, Taffiney, to the podcast.
Thank you very much. I am honored to be here. It's such an amazing opportunity.
Well, it's our honor. Thank you again. So tell us a little bit about Taffiney. Did you grow up in Tennessee? I know that that's where you live now. Is that where you're from? Just give us a real brief background of how you got from where you were to where you are now.
Awesome. So I was born and raised in Jackson, Mississippi. I was raised in an adopted family, but was an extension of my biological family. I married at 16 and left Mississippi and lived in Georgia for about 3 years, and then Michigan for a couple of years, and kind of set my feet in Oklahoma, Western Oklahoma, for 17 years. After all the children graduated from high school, I was free to move around the cabin, right? And ended up here in the Nashville, Tennessee area. And I have really enjoyed this area. It's a beautiful area. I went to school here in 1980s. We're not going to date ourselves, a little while ago. And when I went to school here, actually in the Knoxville area, and said, wow, when I get big, I'm going to come back. So I'm back here in Middle Tennessee and enjoying every bit of it.
Love it. How is it that you came to pen your book, Would You Marry You?
Wow, that's a loaded question. So I had gone through, unfortunately, a divorce and was in the process of preparing myself to move into another relationship. And I had this long list of all the things I was asking God for in a man. You know, I want him to lay hands on me and to speak prophetically, and we're going to plant churches and all these other things. And the Lord said to me, that's great, but would you even marry you? So it started me on a track of really looking at what the Bible said about marriage, and then even deeper, what it said about relationships as a whole, what it said about me as a king's kid, and just deeper and deeper and deeper into who I was. You know, the Bible does tell us that he knows the plans he has for you. Well, I hadn't even become me yet for him to even share with me what those plans were. And so it became a self-evaluative process that I went through to really see who I truly was, because ultimately I am the common denominator and you are the common denominator in every relationship. And through
I'm going
that,
to cut you off just a second there. I want to put a really fine point there. Sorry, Taffiney. You are the common denominator in every relationship you have. Now, this podcast, as we've been at this now for over a year now, we often talk about teams. We often talk about what's important, how to get, accumulate millions, enjoy your millions, and to pass them on. it's all circled around relationships, whether that's within a marital relationship, a familial relationship, a business relationship, you purchasing a property, you're fixing it up and flipping it. There's so many things here that when you have you right, everything else goes right. So you are the common denominator in every relationship you have, in every business relationship, in every business transaction you make. So sorry about that. That was so profound. I needed to jump in and put a fine point on that. So keep going, Taffiney. Sorry.
Most definitely. And that's one of the things that I found as I was entering into a new career path for me in media. It was a new career path for me. And I realized that if I didn't know who I was, when I entered into that relationship, things that would be said or how people would treat me would affect me differently because they were poking at bruises from my past. So once I got past those things and really started to understand authentically, unapologetically who I was as a person, I could enter into that relationship as the best version of me so that it would even draw the right people in partnerships, whether that be team building, whether it be, especially in investments. If I'm investing with a group of people, I have to be able to be authentically me in that situation so that I don't cause a rift in the team itself. So it was really important for me to understand authentically who I was and what my purpose was, what the original intent of this relationship is. So all of those things are encompassed. Yes, this may be talking about marriage, but it's across the board because, as I said, we have to be doers and we are responsible for what we bring to the table in those friendships, those relationships, those business transactions, and everything else.
Love it. So in the event you can, give us the top 3 things or top 3 lessons that you learned, or maybe areas in which that you needed to get you right. I mean, we've had other podcast guests that have talked about, we talk about mindset, and then we had one, Kelly Cardenas, you can go back and listen to that one, that talked about that you're never going to get your mindset right until you have your heart set right. And so I think that's kind of where you're at. Give us kind of 3 top areas or 3 things that you were maybe even revelatory to you that's like, I never thought of it that way. Can you do that?
Sure. So one of those things was really, truly, and it sounds really interesting when I get ready to say it, is choosing to forgive myself for things that I didn't do right. That was important to me because it did shift my mindset. It shifted my mindset to see that, okay, I have to give grace to myself in these situations. So as I was entering into, for example, into a contract when it came to getting ready to publicize my book, entering into that relationship, if I had brought in the mindset that I'm always going to fail, nothing's going to go right, everything I've tried has not worked, if I bring that mindset in, if I would have brought that mindset in, I would have stopped when they first said, this isn't quite good enough. So
did you have that said to you?
I did more than one time.
So in the event that you hadn't learned that lesson, you're saying you wouldn't have gone forward and published
it? No, I wouldn't have.
Okay. And that's all around being able to forgive yourself for past failures?
Correct. Okay. Yeah. Because keep going. Yeah, because that was a bruise that I was bringing in, and this person bumped that bruise that they didn't cause, but I was already healed. If I hadn't been healed from that, then I would have let that bump to that bruise stop me from going forward. Well, the book was the result of a short film that I did. So when I did the short film, being it was my first film, and I submitted it to a film festival, had I not known my purpose, then I would have stepped away from it because I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that this was something that was going to help to transform not just my life, but other lives. So the second thing I would say is knowing your purpose. So understand the forgiveness piece, knowing your purpose, those 2 things. When you talk about heart healing, if something is not feeling good in your heart, then of course that would have stopped me from pursuing relationships, even when I'm asked to come speak. Speaking engagements are very important. it's important that our story is told. Well, if I felt like my story wasn't important or it wasn't going to transform lives, then that one thing would have stopped the relationship when it came to going forward in making sure that my story was told so that it could be a face of hope to others. So if you're talking about three things that are very important to be intentional about, it is about heart healing, mindset, forgiveness, and just knowing and understanding that purpose. And all of those things are necessary in order to get to this place of holistic healing and wholeness so that you can enter into relationships, team building. As a leader, as a follower, you have to be able to know who you are, have a healed heart, and understand your purpose and motive.
That's awesome and profound. There is one thing there, though, I find difficult. And maybe you can walk us through how, and maybe it's in the book, maybe that's something that you've discovered. A lot of people, you go out there and you see these motivational talks, or you have motivation videos and YouTube and everything, and they all talk about purpose. And you talk about that, find your purpose. Mm-hmm. Sometimes that's very difficult for people to arrive at, to really have wholehearted, this is my purpose. Do you have a process, or what do you do to help people find that? Because I know you have a retreat that's generally like the first quarter of every year or something that you actually talk about this, correct?
That is correct.
And we'll put it in the show notes down at the bottom, a website, or you can even tell us, Taffiney, that you can go and find out about this retreat. But this is kind of some things you talk there. So tell us a little bit, what is the process, or how do you help people find that purpose?
So one of the most, I had someone ask me once before, what is the 20% that moved the needle forward 80%, right? When it came to purpose, right? And one of those things was having people to go back into, I say childhood, right? And look at all of the people in your life that were impactful, whether it be parents, coaches, pastors, friends, parents, whatever it was. List those people and then make 2 columns. Look at the good that was in that person and the bad that was in that person, because everybody has good and bad. Circle all the things that you picked up on that you see active in your life right now. If they are things you want to keep, put a check mark by it. If there are things you don't want to keep, draw a line through it and just quit. Because it's very important for us to look at who modeled certain roles in front of us as we were growing up, identifying those things we picked up from that, and seeing if we have brought that into our adult lives as a reason why we're here. My grandfather was the backbone of the family. My great-grandfather, he was born in the teens, 1910, 1908, back then. He was a sharecropper, and he started his own business, grew a business from nothing to nearly $1 million. It would definitely be multi-million dollars in today's time. We own 60 some odd pieces of property. And I learned at a very early age that I did not want to be a landlord. I'll buy and sell. I don't want to be a landlord. I learned that very early on. However, that's exactly what I ended up doing. And so I had to go back and look at, this person set the standard for me as far as what my purpose was, what the original intent was, to build wealth, make sure my children were taken care of, that I could leave generational wealth, leave for your children and your children's children. All those things were put in front of me based on his role in my life. But there were also some negative things there. And so I picked up on those negative things too, of not securing certain things certain ways. I mean, there were just some negative things. So when I looked at my purpose was to be a face of hope to other people, because in case you haven't figured it out, I'm not the standard white male, right? And so a lot of things have been like, oh, you can't do this because, you can't do that because, you can't do this because, and it's all a lie. So I had to get to that place where I knew that was the good thing that my granddad put. So my purpose was to make sure that people understood that it is about what you bring to the table in every relationship that can be the key to success or not success. But I had to go back and look at my grandmother played a certain role. My mom played a certain role. My aunts, a lot of people. So in this one step in the journey to purpose, which is a whole course that I teach, in that one step, people are able to identify, hey, I have thought in my life that I was born to do this. Now I see that's a lie that I picked up from this particular person that was impactful in my life. And I can erase that and now get to a clearer purpose of what it is that I'm supposed to do on this side of heaven.
So after you've looked back and seen some of these role models that you have, does that change who you hang around with? Like, are you more particular with those people and you're quick to cut certain people out?
I'm not as quick to cut people out as I am to move them into a specific sphere, right? So I teach a lot about different spheres. So I have an intimate sphere, which are those people that I really allow to see into me and they see and I see into them. I have a sphere of influence, which are people that I allow to influence me that are also open to me influencing them. And then I have a sphere of concern. I'm concerned about everybody. I'm concerned. I don't want anybody to walk out in the middle of the street and get hit by a truck. However, they may not be a person that I allow to influence me or that allow me to influence them. So when a person shows me who they really are, I move them into the correct sphere, and that's where they stay. They don't get to cross back and forth. So I don't necessarily cut them off, but I put them where they need to be in my life in that season.
Then how do you know when they've shown their true colors? Is there a certain couple events where you're like, okay, now I know that we can move you?
One of the things that I am very intentional about is nurturing relationships that are symbiotic and relationships that are reciprocal. Now, when I see beyond a shadow of a doubt that on more than one occasion, there has been an opportunity for you to reciprocate or for me to step in and you don't allow me in that space, then I get to move you outside of that specific place in the spheres that I have and move you into a different place. So it's not an immediate thing, but it is a reciprocation and a symbiotic relationships that I nurture. And when they're not symbiotic or reciprocal, then I just don't nurture those relationships the same way. I may reach out and check on a friend, periodically. And there's those that if they don't reach out, I don't reach out to them because they've shown me that they are not in that relationship sphere to be symbiotic on what the vision is that God's given me or whatever I'm moving into at that particular time. And they definitely are not in a space of reciprocating. So hope that answers your question.
It does. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So am I to understand from that you will text me and say you've been moved out to a different sphere? Is that how that works? Do you notify them? I'm just teasing. I mean, it's just something that's how much because that is one of the things we talk about is our team, right? One of the most important things in building wealth, which we're all about on this podcast, building wealth and enjoying your wealth and pass it on. It has to do with your heart set and your mind, which you've talked a little bit about. It's also with your team, right? And so that's what your circles are, your inner and outer, is how close that team is and how much they influence you. Tell us a little bit about who have been some critical people in your team. I'm having talked to you now for a minute. I'm certain that your relationship with your God, your Father in heaven, is probably the most important. What would you say would be second most, or who's some people that you've learned lessons from that have been really impactful?
Yes, most definitely. My relationship with God is the most important relationship there is. Without him, I wouldn't be here at all. I definitely wouldn't be who I am. And the second most important relationship, honestly, is with my family. I feel that family is very important. However, I'm also very intentional about those relationships too, when there's times where you have to step back and reevaluate how much you put, because here again, time is a non-renewable resource. So the amount of time that we spend in relationships, in team building, and all of that, we can't get that back. So to pour into or to receive from someone, if it's not beneficial to the ultimate goal, then we need to reevaluate that. So I do a lot of reading. I'm an adamant reader, and I've read several books. I can't even count how many books I've read. I actually had to put myself on restriction from buying more books because that's what I do. As a writer, I read a lot. I've always been an adamant reader. I've read the encyclopedia more than once as a kid. Just get bored and just read. Just didn't have anything else to read, so I read that. But as I'm reading, I do look at people who have done things. I'm more interested in where they failed than where they succeeded. Their success is visible. I'm more interested in the things that they wish they hadn't have done or wish that they have done differently. Think and Grow Rich is one of my favorite books. One of the books that has really Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I mean, there's a lot of books that I've read that have really been, depending upon where I'm at and what season I'm in of what I'm trying to learn. There are mentors around me. I have mentors, spiritual mentors, business mentors, all types of mentors that have helped me to move forward. I am not just looking in one direction. We always have to have a sphere there again, a sphere of influence around us. So I'm always interested in what people are doing and how they're doing it. And it helps me to move forward faster.
Okay, well, you opened the door there. We're interested in where you have failed and what you have done that you wished you wouldn't have done, right? You just said that that's where you learn the most about someone else. So let's be raw here and let us know a little bit about what are some lessons that you have learned or things you wished you would have done differently.
Yeah, I think that, my faith in God has really helped me to look at things from a tad bit different perspective. I don't look at it as things that I go through. I look at it as things that I grow through, because every lesson, good or bad, is a growth opportunity, and we get to grow in those things. So looking back, I think that I wish I would have realized my value a lot sooner. My value in the words, how I articulate things, my writing capabilities, just my ability to speak, public speaking. I wish I would have learned those things sooner. Where I messed up is because of some unresolved childhood trauma, I allowed a person not being inviting to me when I asked for an opportunity to shut me down and to just quiet me and to take my voice away. So that happened in my first marriage. Unfortunately, my first marriage was very abusive, and I stayed in it for a very long time. I was young. I didn't know what I know today. However, the things that I learned from that was that you cannot make people do what they don't want to do. People choose to grow at their own rate, and it's up to you whether you stay or don't stay. And these are things that not just in marriage, this is life, right? These are life lessons, especially when it came to business. I stayed in some entrepreneurial journeys much longer than I should have. Once I saw that it was over, I should have backed out and not allowed I had bankruptcy. And, I think that, anytime we see advancement, we have those places where I lost a lot. At one point, I had 7 or 8 properties. I was in Western Oklahoma, a college town. Was doing really well. I was renting majority to our pharmacy students that were coming in. They were going to be there for 6-7 years. It was just a great opportunity. And when there started to be, when you're first starting out, you do everything yourself. Like I was the handyman. My ex-husband was a handyman. I mean, we did everything ourselves. Like we were tearing out floors and, replacing walls, and, we did everything ourselves. When things got to be a little bit more lucrative, we started paying other people to do some of the works that we could do, and just started stacking more properties, and it just became a lot, and it just failed. What I learned from that, though, is this is my prayer: Lord, don't let me grow past my ability of grace. I don't want to get any bigger than I have the grace to take care of. And so that was a huge lesson for me. And it took a long time to recuperate from that, to get things back into a place. I actually had a hidden fear that don't do it again. That mindset thing, right? Because it had happened to me before. I was not as quick to see a great opportunity and jump on it, because I had that mindset that it failed before, it will fail again. And I had to really shift from that. And that came from there again. Would you marry you? Like, who are you? I know who I am. And because I know who I am, I know that just like I was able to get on top before, I can do that again. So that was one of the major things for me, was losing. I wasn't used to losing. I just wasn't. So.
Good. Formulating the question here. This will be edited out. Do you have anything, Scott?
Looking back and having all of these experiences and speaking to your former self, what is it that you would tell you? Let's say about 18 years old.
Oh, at 18, I had 2 kids.
I mean, that was like 2 years ago for you, so that's pretty good.
Okay, thank you very much. I need to keep you in my back pocket just when I'm feeling bad. Come on.
Moved into the inner circle.
Yes, you got moved in real quick. You got moved in real quick. Yeah. So if I were to go back and to give advice to my 18-year-old self, I would say take your time to research everything and research the research. One of the things that I found is I'm very quick to move. I'm an immediate obedience kind of kid, and get excited when I see a good deal, whatever it is. I mean, even if it's whatever it is, I get excited. Learn what type of buyer you are. That was important for me. There were times where I was very emotional buyer, and then there were times when I was very logical buyer. And that was important for me to identify. It takes some time, 24 hours, 78, 72 hours to think about a decision that you're getting ready to make. Instead of reacting, respond instead of react. Reacting is out of emotion, and response to me is out of really actually analyzing the situation. So if I were to go back to my 18-year-old self, I would definitely be very intentional about teaching that piece and taking the time to learn the difference between, what type of buyer I am, because that has made a big difference in everything that I've done.
Is there someone that you would suggest to yourself to seek out faster? Maybe a mentor or something along those lines?
Wow, that's a loaded question, because a lot of the people that I have followed, there's some that were around for a long time, but I've also followed people that have been through a lot of the similar situations, and they are I say new. I've watched them grow. I've been in their growth process. And so I believe that success leaves clues. And so the crumbs that I get to pick up from another person trailblazing through this process is really what I would advise. So I wouldn't necessarily say that there's anyone that I would say jump on board and look at this person right now. I love John Maxwell. He's one of my favorite people to listen to, and has been for a long time, especially, when he's talking about leadership and he's talking about team building, he's talking about those things. But I was introduced to him very early on. I was in my 20s when I was introduced to him. So that would probably be one of the main people that I would definitely follow, that the success tracks that he's left.
Okay. And let's say today you came home and you went bankrupt again. Everything's gone. First, how quickly do you think you could get back to where you are now? And second, what would be your first steps to take you back to that track?
So if I were to be in a process of looking at bankruptcy at this point in my life, I think one of the main things that would help me to move faster with the least amount of opposition is the fact that I do have an email list. I have people that I could reach out to and to connect with, and not have to spend money on, ads and things like that. So that would be one of the main things that would help me to move quicker, move further, faster. I think that I could jump back up and get back on board really quick, simply because, there again, we're back to relationships. A lot of people think that it's about this or that. It's truly about relationships. And I have built relationships in this last 30 years of my life. I've built a lot of relationships where I do feel like I have nurtured those relationships, and they are relationships that are symbiotic and they are reciprocal. And I feel that I won't get beat up by saying, hey, here I am. This is what happened. This is, what are your suggestions? How can you help me? I don't feel like I would get beat up because those relationships have been nurtured. So it goes back to relationship buildings. I did not have the relationships then that I have now. I did not have an email list then, which I have now. I just didn't have those things. And so I don't think that it would take me near the amount of time to rebuild as it did back then.
Love that. I had a conversation just a couple of days ago where there's a lot of fear in today's world.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the things that I've seen is, besides your connection with God, and besides knowing that he's going to be there through the thick and thin,
Mm-hmm.
you need to shift your mindset to there's an abundance out there. The people who have the least amount of fear are the ones who can point and say, doesn't matter if I lose it all tomorrow or today or right now. It'll be 6 months. It'll be a year. It won't take me long because same thing. I have the relationships in place. That's where the security is that I think a lot of people are so eager and after, is you are in control of your own destiny. So I really appreciate that. So what is the next big hurdle for you? That next big mountain peak that we can look to and be excited to celebrate with you?
That's such a loaded question. That is a very loaded question. I'm actually writing a script right now for a movie, a feature-length movie. And, I'm writing that script, and it is, it's a beautiful movie of redemption and also looking at redemption as a whole, of relationships. And so that is the big thing that I'm doing right now, but also really starting to lean more back into real estate investment and investing. I was a realtor for years, and I know that side of it. And now getting back into the investment side of things is going to be the next big thing for me. So, those are the two big things that I've got going on. I've got a new grandbaby coming, so I'm excited about that.
Mm-hmm.
My 30-year-old, her and her husband are expecting their first. And so I'm excited about
when?
They're expecting her on February the 7th.
Ooh.
However, we believe that she's going to come in January. She's in the 85 percentile now of growth. She's almost 3 pounds already. So we've been keeping an eye on that. And that will be grandbaby number 10 for me. So I'm super excited. Everybody's excited. She's the last of the Mohegans to have a baby. So we're excited about that. So that's going to be my main focus right there. But
that's awesome. My first is due in about a week and a half.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
Which is also my first grandbaby. So it's a first.
Oh, girl or boy?
It's a little girl.
Oh, have you picked out a name yet?
Her name's going to be Scotty.
Oh,
Whoa, he put it out there.
There we go. But the fun part is there's 28 years between Jason and I'm his oldest, and there'll be exactly 28 years between me and my first. So there's a lot of these
wow.
firsts going on.
I'm telling you, as much as you think, Jason, as much as as much as you love your kids, I was going to say, think you love your kids. As much as you love your kids, this opens up a whole nother layer of your heart. Like, I'm telling you, there's something about grandbabies. If I could have figured out how to have the grandbabies without having to deal with the kids, I probably would have went that route, but not quite possible. So I'm excited for you guys. That is so much fun. I cannot tell you the joy. It's just the most beautiful thing. And you think about, just, I mean, the love that you can have for another human being is just, it's phenomenal. However, sometimes when they got teenagers, I had to remember how much joy they were when I was pregnant. And when I brought them home from the hospital, I had to remember that, because I had 4 kids in 5 years. So, and I would have had way more than that had, there not been other circumstances. But yeah, I love children. I love grands, and it's going to be exciting for you. I'm excited for you.
I'm excited for you.
Thank you.
Well, when you finish your script, to kind of bring this back for everyone, when you finish your script, we want to, and it gets published movie, we want to be there to help you celebrate. That is really cool. So make sure to let us know. And not only would we want to come and do a podcast live with you, but we would love to watch the movie with you. So let us know when it's done.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I appreciate it. Once I get the script done, a lot of people don't. And I didn't know in the film world, getting the script completed and getting it on lock. Then usually what I will be doing is shooting a pilot. And in shooting that pilot, I will be, reaching out to people to get them involved in the script or certain parts of the script. And then you start fundraising. And so then from the fundraising part, once you get, pretty much the majority of it, you start getting your cast and all those people together. And so I'm really excited about that. I will also be doing a documentary that is, we're still raising money for it. It's called Wealth with Purpose. It is a group of millionaires, and some of them, I think it was about 8 of them, were actually in a book called Wealth with Purpose. And so they reached out to me to produce that project. So it is a documentary that kind of follows their life, looks at their journey, and kind of gives, points and things from that perspective of what it looks like to. And I think a couple of them actually were millionaires and then lost everything. And then, and now they're back into that multimillionaire status, which I see that a lot. So I think that's kind of we learn, and it's our growth process. It's our journey. And so that should be coming out in 2025. So we'll work on it all year. So we'll be all over the country filming. Well, not just the country. There are 2 in New Zealand and then 1 in Portugal. So we'll be filming all year for that, most of the year for that, and getting everything together. So I'm excited about that project as well. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Jason, any final thoughts?
No, been well fed and things have been great. Good podcast interview. Thank you, Daphne. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Any final words from you, though, that you would like to leave in closing?
I think that was directed at you.
Well, one of the things I would love to I would love to leave the fact that ultimately, as I've said before, the most important thing to remember in life is that you are the common denominator in every relationship. So you must be intentional to be secure in what you're bringing to the table as a leader, as a follower, as a business partner, and have purpose partnerships, bringing the best version of yourself to the table every day. That's what I have.
Love that. Well, everyone, thank you for tuning in. We are super grateful for our guest. Thanks again. All of her links to connect with her will be left in the show notes down below. Please remember to buy her book, Would You Marry You, which will also be down there. And if you'd like to connect with Jason or I, make sure to hit us up on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or shoot us an email. Again, all the links will be down below to make it easy for you. And if you like the show, make sure you to drop us a 5-star review. It really helps us out with the algorithms and everything else. And remember, mastering your millions all starts with your mind and your team. Make sure they are the best. We'll catch you next time.
Thanks for listening to Master Your Millions with Jason and Scott Henderson. Check the show notes for any links or contact information about today's guest. Make sure to follow the show so you don't miss any future episodes.